Good evening. First of all, let me thank Association of Professional Bankers for inviting me for this important occasion, 34th anniversary and moving into 35th of Association of Professional Bankers. So one thing I must say, I was impressed with your song that reflects key values of any professional banker should possess. I think that like it. Also, the current theme, the forward gear road to economic sustainability is also, I think, very timely and relevant theme that you have selected. Let me first congratulate the organizers for selecting a relevant theme for today's conference and 2 days deliberations of technical sessions tomorrow. The President and members of the Association of Professional Bankers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, also resource persons who have been here from different parts of the world. It's indeed a great privilege for me to stand here today with an esteemed audience to deliver the speech outlining the prospects for Sri Lanka to achieve high and balanced economic progress with equitable benefits to all, which is all about what our theme is consistent with fourth gear road to economic sustainability. I believe this is a moment to learn from our crisis experience and hardships encountered during the crisis period, build on the progress made so far, and look into the future as our journey continues. At the outset, let me briefly discuss the country's present economic conditions briefly and then set the stage for today's discussion, which is about the moving into the economic sustainability going forward. So at first, let me talk a little bit about the signs of economic recovery. The Sri Lankan economy has shown signs of revival, supported by the collective and coordinated efforts of the government and the central bank since early 2022, since we encountered these difficult times. Even though some of these measures were painful for the people in the short run, with certain leading sectors doing much of the heavy lifting, the prudent policy interventions have prevented further aggravation in economic adversities in the economy, while yielding favorable outcomes in terms of macroeconomic stability. That's a prosperity we were trying to achieve, this overall stability. The real economy has recorded some positive momentum towards the latter part of 2023, as already witnessed. This is led by the robust recovery in the service sector. The economy is likely to gather its pace from this year, supported by the gradual easing of supply side constraints, as well as the reduced cost of borrowings in the economy. The country's envisaged macroeconomic stabilization, with the completion of debt restructuring, is expected to facilitate this economic revitalization further in the near future. On inflation front, which is one of the main objectives of central bank, Sri Lanka has been on disinflation path since the latter part of 2022, as you all know, and inflation has reached the targeted level, with inflation expectations also remain very well anchored. The central bank began its monetary policy easing in mid-2023, after started tightening cycle sharply in April 2022. Within about 1 year, we were able to ease the monetary policy conditions with the view to support the economy reaching its potential. I think still the economy is moving well below potential. Also providing greater autonomy to set monetary policy and streamline the remit of the central bank. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka Act was enacted. This is a longevity, very important landmark reform. This enables the formal recognition of flexible inflation targeting rating, what we call FIT, as a monetary policy framework of the central bank, complemented by a flexible exchange rate policy, which is consistent with our monetary policy framework under the new regime. The external sector is showing a strong resilience, supported by the improved foreign exchange inflows, particularly in terms of workers' remittances, tourism earnings, and other inflows to the service account. With these developments in the external sector, the BOP account is estimated to have recorded a surplus in 2023, such as current account, both current account and BOP surpluses after over 4.5 decades. As of today, that's annual performance of last year. As of today, we can witness an organic growth in the country's external reserves, which have also been supported by the receipt of 2 tranches under the IMF Extended Fund Facility arrangement and the receipt of other multilateral support from other institutions. I am also pleased to note the progress of the revenue-based fiscal consolidation program of the government. You also recognize the contribution made by the government. The government has undertaken to reinstate fiscal sector sustainability by way of implementing significant tax reforms and expenditure rationalization. The increase in government revenue has been substantial due to these measures. Actually, in fact, there has been overperformance so far. Continuous commitment of the government towards fiscal consolidation is utmost important for what we call sustainable recovery going forward. We are optimistic that the ongoing debt restructuring efforts, as we are in the last stage of this process, will ensure the path for debt sustainability in the period ahead, which was the main cause of the sovereign debt crisis we experienced since 2021 and 2022 period. Meanwhile, we acknowledge that fiscal austerity holds back growth. Therefore, identifying the right phase and the right mix between cutting spending and raising revenues is also critical in the years to come going forward. We hope that there will be some adjustment going forward to ease the burden on the people. The final sector that we all are interested in, has weathered, as already mentioned, several difficult years, but remain resilient, supporting the recovery in the economic activity, and also it's important even for future recovery. Finance sector should remain robust going forward. While acknowledging the finance sector commitment to remain stronger in rough waters, Central Bank prides itself on ensuring finance system stability. This is one of the key objectives of Central Bank, even in the midst of the crisis, through timely implementation of several policy measures. Central Bank implemented several regulatory and supervisory reforms to ensure the safety and soundness of banking sector. This include forthcoming amendments to the Banking Act. That's one important, another landmark legislation, amendment to the Banking Act in terms of strengthening minimum licensing requirements, corporate governance, acquisitions, mergers, and consolidation. Conduct of consolidated supervision, introducing proportionality in supervision and regulations, and limiting large exposures to address concentration risks in banks. These are the areas that we have identified for us to improve further. New Banking Act will help us to implement all these reforms to strengthen further the banking sector reforms. Also, with a view to ensure the strong and adequately capitalized banking sector, which is most important to support the growth, bank diagnostic exercise was carried out as a part of the IMF EFF arrangement. That's all bankers know about this, to assess the impact on banks' capital from asset quality deterioration that we have seen during the difficult times last couple of years, and other risk factors. The central bank developed a roadmap for recapitalization of 9 large banks based on asset quality review conducted independently with support from the ADB. One of the major milestones achieved towards strengthening financial stability of the country is the establishment of the Financial Sector Crisis Management Committee, FCMC. That's a new initiative that was established to deal with any potential kind of a emerging crisis or stresses. This serves as an institutional framework for the policy coordination between the central bank and the Minister of Finance to effectively manage and minimize the impact of crisis, especially in the financial sector. We have different coordination in the monetary policy under the new Central Bank Act, but this is Financial Crisis Management Committee is mainly focusing on addressing any emerging stresses in the financial sector. With a view to broaden the role of the banking sector in the economic recovery process, the measures to expedite the establishment of business revival units is an important initiative. This establishment of business revival units by the bank is expected to provide greater contribution in the recovery of businesses, those affected by the economic crisis, especially small and medium enterprises and corporates. So we will soon issue regulations, and we have already consulted the industry. Especially it's important to support SMEs and micro businesses in this kind of different, and also the recovery process to expedite the recovery. Further, the National Credit Guarantee Institution, which is also will support the flow of credit into micro and small enterprises. This is also set to commence operations shortly. These are expected to help make significant strides in the facilitation of SMEs, thereby enhancing the SMEs' contribution in rebuilding the Sri Lankan economy, as you said, theme is on the sustainable basis. Also, we must not forget that other part, the central bank also has some responsibility on the AML safety regulations, and also you are part of this the cooperation. The money laundering and terrorist financing can threaten a country's economic stability. Therefore, the banking sector, being the largest financial sector in Sri Lanka, needs to be more vigilant on its role in ensuring AML safety safeguards within the country. There's an array of measures to be implemented in relation to building defenses against money laundering and financing of terrorism, given the country's most recent national risk assessments results indicating a medium to high level risk to money laundering in the banking sector. These are the important area that we would like to focus going forward in the near future. Both the central bank and the FIU are deeply committed to supporting the financial sector to fight against the money laundering and the financing of terrorism by way of strengthening the country's financial systems, promoting transparency, and combating illicit financial activities. While I wish to reiterate that combating financing of terrorism increasingly requires harnessing the power of financial technology or fintech. The technology is important for us to address all these concerns. As you know, Sri Lanka's next mutual evaluation, which is an important event, which will take on AML safety, been scheduled to commence from March 2025, with our experience that we were relisted some time ago. And I believe that banking sector has an important role in this assessment to emphasize the perseverance and the commitment of the sector. I take this opportunity to request your full support to meet our compliance objectives and maintain the integrity of the Sri Lankan finance sector, including the banking sector. While we are striving to see the recovery in economic progress, the world is much more into working towards the right course of actions towards a sustainable economic development. There is another theme, important theme, which ensures more opportunities for green growth. As we all know, environmental, social, and governance issues are interconnected. By integrating environmental considerations into financial investment decisions, it helps ensure that economic growth does not come at the expense of the environment and social equity. We have to consider environmental conservation as an integral part of our decision-making processes. Sustainable financing offers opportunities for social equity, infrastructure development, responsible business practices, innovation, and long-term planning, which are all critical for countries' sustainable economic development. With due consideration to the need of integrating sustainability principles into the financial system of the economy, Central Bank has already taken several steps, including launching of roadmap for sustainable finance in Sri Lanka back in 2019 with support of your banking sector, and green finance taxonomy in 2022 for several sectors. In addition to the development of the National Financial Inclusion Strategy, that is also important, the financial inclusion point of view, and also access to finance especially for the SMEs and MSMEs. Central Bank is in the process of developing a program for operationalizing the taxonomy by way of building capacities in multiple sectors. We recognize support we are receiving from multiple agencies in this regard, especially UNDP, IFC, as well as establishing solid accreditation and certification, which is necessary in order to support establishing green activities and avoiding any greenwashing. These initiatives are expected to enable more sustainable financing avenues in the country, thereby supporting the country to reap benefits of its vast potential in this area. This is the future in financing and also development, and also maintain sustainability. So what's the road ahead us? So this forwarding is time for us to change gears to a much more steady, sustainable path. As I mentioned earlier, with the economy showing a greater recovery from its deepest contraction, I am confident on the economy's potential to reach higher and sustainable growth path for the medium term. This will ensure equitable benefits to entire citizenry. However, such outcomes are highly contingent on today's policy choices. That's also, we have to be mindful about this. As the policymakers and major stakeholders of the economy, we are responsible in shaping the future growth trajectory of this country. As we have learned from the recent crisis, the right policies and sound reforms are essential to build strong economic foundations. In this regard, maintaining price stability, which is our main objective, remains a key as it is a prerequisite for growth. With the subsiding of underlying inflation pressures, monetary policy has been loosened gradually since June last year, as I mentioned earlier, and further easing has entered the force, allowing sufficient space for monetary policy transmission to take full effect and to prevent any undue pressures on the economy. So we have to be very prudent and need to be monitoring carefully of the outcomes going forward. As inflation expectations remain well anchored, the recent tax and tariff increases, which will exert supply-side pressures on inflation, are not expected to warrant a change in the course of monetary policy action. As you know, those are administrative measures. However, the central bank will remain vigilant of any developments that can alter the course of the inflation outlook and also the second-round impact, and will undertake actions proactively to fulfill its mandate of price stability. Also, with the expected overall improvements in fiscal performance and the resultant reduced reliance of government on the financial sector, the burden on the economy is likely to reduce, thereby improving resource allocation of the economy. Further, with the anticipated completion of debt restructuring, the improving investor and business sentiments and the current low interest rate environment, credit flows across the economy are expected to improve, as already seen in pickup in credit to private sector in the latter half of 2023. We would expect that to continue, with government gradually moving away from demanding more resources from the domestic market. That will have crowding in effect. This should spur economic activity and steer the economy towards its potential or a medium to long term. Also, the key aspect of the domestic debt operation have been concluded. Agreement in principle have been reached with foreign official creditors, and discussion held with external private creditors that have reached an advanced stage. Debt restructuring is expected to be completed. The full process is expected to be completed prior to the second review with the IMF. Accordingly, the progress that is expected to be made in these fronts for the coming year will help eliminate the lingering uncertainties while improving investor confidence in a sustained manner. This is where I think banking sector and finance sector will have to be looking forward to. Going forward, the central bank's commitment to maintain a market-determined and flexible exchange rate that can serve as a buffer against external shocks. Thus, we have to understand the rationale for maintaining flexible exchange rate that will ensure a conducive environment for trade and investments. These measures are expected to mitigate trade distortions while strengthening the country's integration with international value chains, thus enabling an expansion in the country's trade potential and also improve competitiveness. Efforts to promote and diversify both merchandise exports and trade in services while attracting non-debt obligatory foreign financial flows would be essential going forward to safeguard external sector stability, which is also very important. That's why we have been several times going through balance of payment crisis in the past, because we have not been focusing in these areas properly. While the commitment of the financial sector paternity, like all of you, to expedite the transmission of monetary policy actions remain vital in the period ahead, thereby ensuring benefits of policy actions are passed on to the people. That's the other important message I want to convey, that benefits of the monetary policy easing should be going all the way down to the grassroots level. Central Bank is committed to safeguard the financial stability by strengthening finance sector through regulatory and supervisory reforms, which requires a change in business models, step up governance and risk management frameworks to withstand continuous challenges. That's important. The governance and risk management frameworks need to be strengthened. Other initiatives to improve the financial inclusion, which is also now part of our mandate on the new Central Bank Act. Improve financial inclusion and access to finance will enable resumption of economic activity, in particular in the small to medium small sector, thereby ensuring more income generation and improve living standards in the economy. Further, in complementing these fundamental policies, transformational reforms in terms of improving governance and streamlined regulation must be on the priority list of the national economic agenda of the country. This is beyond the central bank mandate. While Sri Lanka being the first country in Asia to undergo the IMF's governance diagnostic assessment, there is a strong commitment for ambitious governance reforms based on key recommendations from the report to help restore and sustain economic, social, and political stability, addressing the gaps in the anti-corruption legal framework, and priority reforms to tackle corruption vulnerabilities in the economy will be instrumental in creating investment conducive environment in the period ahead. Those are the things that we need to focus going forward. Finally, as we talk about high and sustainable growth, let us not forget the plight of the low-income and vulnerable groups of the country who have been disproportionately affected by the economic instabilities and the crisis we had in the recent past, and be more cautious on that end-stage growth path encompasses equitable benefits which ensure better living conditions for the entire population. To sum up in this evening, strong, more inclusive, balanced, and sustainable development is within our grasp. But the challenges we face today is to choose the right combination of policies and resolutely work in this path together, which requires a collective responsibility toward a common destiny. In this regard, the stronger and resilient financial sector, which fosters financial inclusion as well as productive financial innovation in the economy, remain vital to better support the growth potential, as well as to address the green financing gaps, which support the economy to capitalize untapped potentials in the period ahead. Certainly, the path forward would be difficult, amidst multifaceted headwinds, but the destination, economic stability, is worthwhile. So I wish the deliberation that you are going to have next couple of days, technical discussion, will have very fruitful, useful deliberation and the fruitful discussion, and we all will learn out of this technical session. Thank you, APB.